Hello and welcome to the Heroes World Book Club Part 2. This is chapters 17 to 19 of Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire, the Thrawn Trilogy, Book 1. And just like last time, I have gathered my 4 Star Wars friends. I'm joined by Jesse Rendar.
Hello.
Scott Solo.
Hello.
And Megan Jin, who didn't put Megan Jin on her name, but that's okay. We'll get it right next time.
Oh, so close.
Hopefully you guys had a chance to check out our last video where we delved into chapters 1 through 6, which is basically the introduction of all the characters and all the things we love Star Wars. So now we're going to dive right into chapter 7 through 19. Now, keep in mind, this book is 30 plus years old, so there is going to be spoilers aplenty, but we are not going to describe everything in such a way that you, if you have not read it, cannot continue to read or choose to read and enjoy this book. We're going to talk about it, what we liked, what we didn't like, what our expectations was, and maybe some of our preconceived notions about it. But we're not going to go bit per bit, verbatim for plot, so that you can still read it, because it's fantastic. No matter how good our description could be, it will not be as good as Mr. Timothy Zahn's writing. So let's start with chapter 7. If we were going to do a quick recap, chapter 6, our heroes were, it's a trap. They realized that their diplomatic meeting was under, let's say, maybe they got ratted out and somebody told them that they were there, and we leave our heroes separated. Han and Leia are in the market. Chewie's on the Millennium Falcon, and Luke Skywalker is touring some building, so they're all separated, and they get attacked by 2 distinct groups of a new alien race to us. Again, we might get the pronunciation of this wrong. The Nagari, gray-skinned aliens that were brandishing some pretty mean-looking shock sticks. So let's start with chapter 7. Who wants to go first? What did you think of this chapter?
I thought it was really cool, because we can see like Luke and Leia still have the Force connection, so that they're communicating, but they're not communicating in the way that Luke would communicate with like a fully trained Jedi. I think it's more just emotions and maybe images instead of like specific words or specific phrases or whatever, right? He'll hear like Luke from her, things like that. So it's still really interesting to see the the echo. It's still really interesting to see how far Leia can still come with her Jedi training. So I thought that was cool.
Right on, right on. Yeah, one of the things that struck me for this chapter was, I was like, we talked about the anticipation, and I'm like, oh yeah, Return of the Jedi. Like, this is we're finally gonna get Luke in action and stuff. And I think for me, I really liked seeing that this new alien race just was kind of like spec ops, tactically trained, backing Luke into the corner, like just not rushing him. Like, they knew, they're like, hey, this guy's a threat. Let's make sure we're away from the civilians, and let's just back them into what they thought was a corner. So I thought that was pretty cool. Jesse, what do you think of this chapter?
I enjoyed it. I like the internal struggle Luke's going through still. He tried every option.
Yep.
Except kill them. But unfortunately, he had to do the deed and kill them all. Yeah. And was that the first time somebody's thrown a lightsaber in Star Wars?
I think at the time that this is written, I think it definitely was, because I think you would have had some Force powers and abilities and stuff talked about in the role-playing books. And I think the role-playing books preceded this novel by... this is 91. So I think the West End Games was like in the mid 80s, 85 maybe. So you might have had talk of what Jedi abilities were, but this is definitely, I think, canonically the first time we have a lightsaber being thrown and used to not decapitate, but incapacitate, take down people. So I think that was pretty good. And you hit it bang on. Luke tries to talk them down. He's like, hey, let's talk about this. We don't have to do this. And he says, hey, let me try and incapacitate them. I think he used his lightsaber to knock down like a tapestry, right?
Yeah.
So he's trying other things, but it's that moment, that realization that Leia and Han are endangered. They are also being attacked, and he's like, "Uh-oh, I've got to get there." And I think that puts a little bit more tension. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be able to stop these guys. If they catch me, they're going to catch Leia and Han." So there's a little bit of fire in him. And
when he jumps out the window, he knows it could hurt.
Yes,
but he's going to do it because he's got nothing else matters to him except getting down to Han and Leia to protect them, right? So,
yeah. Sorry, Jesse. Finish up.
Oh, I was going to say it's a really good chapter for Luke and seeing his character build up even more than we've already seen.
Yeah.
I liked, you get your stormtroopers that, they missed the 99% shot, right? Like they're terrible, the point blank. But these guys kind of learn, right? Like he's using the tapestries, and then they shoot the tapestries to stick them on the wall, right? Like they are a little bit more tactical. That said, they still kind of got their butts kicked, right? Although in a few chapters, they show that they learn, right? They still kind of keep getting their butts kicked, but they learn a little bit more, and they're a little bit more tactical than your standard sort of, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? 3PO gets jacked up, right? So that's always a good sign for a fight, right? Like he's either in pieces or he's stuck to, in this case, he's stuck with whatever the rubber cement is they were using with. So, and I agree with Jesse that there's a lot of that trepidation with Luke, not only with the fight, but but also at the end where I think it's this chapter where he's starting to think about training. It comes up, I think there's a little quote at the end about maybe trying to get Leia more trained and how he's going to be afraid that he's going to make the same mistakes that were made, by Ben and everyone else.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in this chapter because of the trigger of this action. This is clearly they think it's an attempt on their lives, but then when they examine the weapons, and Han's the only one who recognizes what that weapon is. So it's almost like, oh no, they were trying to kidnap us and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what Han does. I think Han actually played it really, really cool. And this is just like, an example of, I don't want to use the word street smarts, but you quick in action, you're not going to catch Han Solo flat-footed. So I really like that. He snaps an order to Leia. He's like, yo, get me that thing off of the vendor. And all of a sudden it's just like the race of people thought they were stealing stuff, so they just crowd them. All of a sudden, human shields, what are you going to do? You can't really fight through that, right? And that gives Luke the time to make his way down. But I really thought that was pretty cool. Almost like a really good sense of teamwork, even though they didn't realize that they were all working together, right? So they instantly, I guess, fall into that mode that they trust each other. They know who's going to do what. They can rely on each other. And then that segues right into Chewbacca coming in with the Falcon, and it's like you're just it's like, hey, it's a good thing you stayed back, Chewie, because he flies in, perfect. I thought that was just a really good end to the action scene. You had Luke's action, you had Han doing something, you had Leia doing something, Chewie comes into the rescue, and then they were off. So what was your did anybody have a favorite standout moment in this chapter?
I gotta say the lightsaber throw. That was really cool. just how it built up. He tried to bring the tapestry down. At the beginning, he tried to negotiate with them first too, didn't he? He said, "What can I do?" Like, hey, and then they backed him into the corner. And then Chewie coming down. What an all-star! What an unsung hero! He was sitting ready for something to go down. He wasn't having a nap in the back or anything.
Yeah. he wasn't playing chess or whatever the Jack table with R2 or whatever, right? So that was
his hands were on the control, waiting to go, right?
Waiting. Yep, like a good loyal companion. All right, Megan, did you have a favorite part in this chapter?
I did. I liked there was a subtle nod to The Empire Strikes Back when Han says to Leia, it's near the end of the chapter. There wasn't time to discuss it in a committee. And I thought that was so funny because there's that scene in Empire Strikes Back where he just like shouts it, we don't have time. There's no time for a committee. And she goes, I am not a committee. So,
and the best part was Luke's like, I'm gonna have to ask them about that inside joke. It's so perfect, you know. It's just really, really cool. Scott, what was your favorite moment?
Honestly, it's got to be just the imagery of 3PO flailing about. Like, I just, because that's like classic across, Empire and Jedi. It's just 3PO just, oh my gosh, duck. Like, I just had the mental imagery, and it just stuck with me.
Yeah, no, I think that was really, really good. I also liked I think it was this the end of this chapter where Han just kind of takes control. He's like, yeah, we're leaving. We're like jetting. And then she gets mad. It's like, no, you are under my protection. You are my wife. You are carrying my children. I'm making this decision. We're out of here. We're not going to stick around if they've got friends. And I really like that snap decision, not worrying about the ramifications because he's dealing with, a new situation. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a evolution of that character. Like we saw, I think Han's one of the people in the original trilogy that we see the most growth with, and I felt that this is a continuation of it. He's not the kind of the loner and the smuggler and all of those things, and even though he didn't want to be the general anymore or whatever, he's into a new position, and that's potential father, and he just acted very well. So I'm going to say it was super cool to see all of them in action, and I will probably say my favorite stuff was that Han just taking charge. So I thought that was super, super cool. But we were all in agreement that this was that, yes, hey, we are now hitting the gas pedal. We've had 6 chapters. We've had 70 pages to build up and set the stage for everybody. Now let's go. And it's like, okay, now, not that it wasn't Star Wars before, but you've now had the adventure portion of it, like that action that is not space combat. It's as close to personal as it gets, and then away we go from here. So on to chapter 8, and this is a chapter that I would call kind of the clash of egos, right? We've got Thrawn, and he's clashing with the Jedi Master Joris Koboth, or Koboth. I don't know how we're going to pronounce that one. And I think that this one is just very, very, again, it's almost like that political chapter, but we're really seeing that these two characters are like, I don't even want to say they're both alpha. They're just both power centric, and they're butting heads. Like, they can't, like, if Thrawn didn't have those creatures protecting him from the Force, I think he's gone, because they're just almost, it's like Thrawn needs him. He doesn't need the Koboth. I don't think needs Thrawn, and I think that's where the power dichotomy is a little bit changing. Did you guys get that same kind of impression?
Yeah, but he's too smart for that. He's not going to go there without those, right? Like, that was the whole point. So, like, I agree. Like, he probably would, maybe in a fist fight might get his butt kicked, but like, he's not going to get into a fist fight. Like, he's going to bring, he's going to bring a gun to a knife fight, right? Yeah. Like, he's like 2 steps ahead.
No, for sure. Now, there was one thing that, as I'm reading this particular chapter, and we see that Thrawn this is another moment where Thrawn is displeased with his subordinates and how he takes it out on them. But this time, it's with the Nagari Rux race, the gray assassins, and he kind of just is just like, I'm not even gonna deal with them. Paleon, you deal with them. Kind of like it's almost like a backhanded, like just super insulting. Like, I'm not even gonna tell you I'm upset with you. I'm just not gonna talk to you. So now you've got to boil that over in your mind and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this guy is that's a different type of cold. You know what I mean? Especially for this honor-bound race that works exclusively with Thrawn, because Paleon's like, hey, you usually give the orders. Are you sure you want me to contact them and stuff? And he's like, yes, they'll get the message. And I'm like, wow, man, like this again, just another level of cunning. You know, just he's just super smart, right?
It reminds me of when parents are like, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. And you're like,
totally.
Crap.
Yeah,
like, that's what it is.
Yeah, they're crushed. You know, you'd be like, oh my god, like this is like I'm not getting the proper response that they expect. But I do think one thing, and I want to pose this question at this point now. Do you think Thrawn is underestimating what a Jedi can do?
No.
No,
I don't think. We'll come back to that. Can we just put a bookmark in that? I think I know that. Yeah. Two, though, to jump back a little bit, when Paleon's disciplining the no-grays, there's a part after that too where he speaks out of turn and he apologizes for it. And I believe Thrawn says, don't worry, I like other people's input, which shows him he's not Vader, which Paleon's used to talking to, right? Like we saw Vader in the first one choke the guy out for questioning his authority. Yeah. And I believe Thrawn's words were, my position and my ego are not jeopardized at this point. So it shows Thrawn is a different, cunning kind of leader.
Yes, and that's a great point, because this is kind of the first time I think in this particular chapter we've got Paleon is he kind of speaks out of turn, but he's like, hey, why we can accomplish both of these things at the same time? Why don't we do this? And neither of those Thrawn or Joris thought of it, because I think they're too busy butting heads. So it shows that Paleon is capable. He's a capable commander, but he's just not at Thrawn's kind of level. But I guess let's roll back a little bit to my question, and I'm almost thinking that, you know, he sends one team of Nagari to apprehend the only Jedi, right? And by proxy, I almost think that it's the same, or I get the feeling to this point that he doesn't take the threat of the rebellion, and by proxy, I would say the Jedi, seriously, right? Because he knows enough to get the Empire, but it's just like, okay, yeah, we'll just send one team. Meanwhile, these are the heroes of the Republic. It's almost like you would want to be like, I am going to overextend to get them, but he kind of sends it, and even Joris is like, you told me you were going to get me the Skywalkers, and it's almost like, and at this point, Thrawn's not, you know, comfortable with failure of any kind or of any of his decisions, but it's almost like he's not putting enough attention or enough energy to it, and it's like I feel that he should know what a Jedi could do, and maybe be like, yeah, well, maybe for Luke and Han, Luke is going to get 20 guys, and maybe Han and Leia is going to get 10, but it didn't seem like that was the thing for me. So
I think he underestimated all of them together working as a team. I don't think he realized Han was going to bring his communicator. I don't think he realized Leia could use the Force to smash the pot or steal the jewelry or whatever she did. That's where I think Thrawn is like he didn't expect them to work that well as a team to jive together.
Okay,
so cohesive.
That's fair enough. But he'll definitely learn as he goes. So The next half of this chapter, not half, but the next part of it, we've got a lot of, it flips over to the New Republic, and this is, we're getting the more of the political intrigue, and we find out that we've got two diplomats or two forces that are butting heads, and that's Admiral Akbar and the Bothan Bosk Felela. We're going to go with that, Felela. Lots of political maneuvering here. It's kind of interesting that they hear the testimony and the evidence from people that saved the galaxy, and then they're very dismissive of it. Yeah. Oh, who knows who those gray guys could be? That maybe they just don't, there's no record of them, so they can't be real. We didn't see them, so they can't be real. So I felt that was kind of a little bit of an odd thing to do. Do you think the politics were blinding them to that? They were too focused in on who's going to lead the New Republic or who's going to be the head of the military, and they were not concerned with their biggest diplomat's safety.
They're too busy fighting each other. I think what's it, Fele? Is that what we're calling? Yeah. And Adbark are too busy fighting each other, trying to get the upper hand. So if Adbark says, let's go left, Fele is going to say, no, we go right.
We go right.
And then we're going to fight each other. I just love Han and politics, though. I believe that part starts off with, didn't I just describe to you what happened? And then they ask him again, what happened? Mm-hmm. But no, I think it's Fele and Abark just butting heads with each other. I want to be in charge.
Yeah. Everybody, it's like a lot of posturing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then I've put this in quotation marks, and then the Bantha in the room, right? How did the Nagari know where the Solos would be? So that's the big question on their hand. So at this point, do you guys have any suspects that there is a leak, or who the leak could possibly be at Chapter 8?
I mean, just because he's new, I want to put the blame on Fela Dog Guy.
Often, yes.
Yeah, just because he's probably he has his own agenda. That's very clear. And he's probably trying to gather people to his side of his agenda. And so he's maybe letting slip too much information to try and gain people's confidence. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. But in my mind, it's him because he's new. And yeah, Akbar's it's a trap. He's that guy. Right?
Yeah. So because we haven't seen him in the movie, he's suspect number one.
Yeah, that's definitely why, because I don't know who he is. So It is him.
All right, Scott, any thoughts at this point? Do you even think it is a leak?
I think it is, and it seems, again, it's like a long game, and there's lots of posturing. So it may not be that he really wants anyone killed or hurt, but he's letting little nuggets out, and wherever they go, he's like, well, I can't control where the information goes. So it's sort of like blameless, but he just starting the trickle and then letting it progress.
Yeah. Jesse, anything to add?
So Fele, the Bothan, seems too much of a target, that he's the traitor. I think it's Winter. And I think Fele and Adbark are butting heads because maybe Fele thinks it's Adbark and vice versa. But they don't want to accuse each other because then that starts a whole new drama. I think it's Winter. She seems too suspicious. She records every conversation,
Yep,
and
she can remember.
She can remember, and she's very close to Han and Leia. Mm-hmm. She's Leia's what are they
childhood friend / court.
But she would know where Leia is at all times because they're so close, right?
Yeah, but we need to know possibly what could their motivation be at that point. We could definitely see if it was Felela. If he gets Leia out of the way, then maybe he's looking to head the Republic or whatever. So that's motivation. But that's a good point bringing up Winter. But we might see, well, what would her motivation be at this point. We've only really encountered her once in the chapter so far.
She's new.
On the
So
book.
she's suspect
She's
number 2.
new.
Yeah,
She's new.
Yeah. She's on the list.
I think it would be too obvious for the Bothan to be the traitor.
Yeah. Just because of how they're writing him, right? Yeah.
Just how they're writing him, and just Timothy Zahn seems like he's going to give you a little nugget, and you're going to be like, oh, it's this guy, and then all of a sudden it's going to twist, and it's not going to be him. It's going to be
something else. Yeah,
somebody else.
So that's exactly right. I think once you start realizing how he's writing it, you can kind of, you don't want to take anything at surface value just yet. Like, he's writing these characters so good, they're so multidimensional. You're just like, it could be, but that seems too easy. But maybe that's what he wants me to think, So there's all kinds of stuff in it. But also, too, I think we mentioned this before. He's writing these characters, and they feel like legitimately true. So maybe because you're getting this feeling from this character, maybe it definitely says something, because he's definitely writing it very well. All right, so on to chapter 9. Chapter 9, this is the test. This is putting Jorus Koboth to the test. What Thrawn wanted him to do was to boost the efficiency of the Imperial forces, and he chooses a pretty distinct battle tactic to do. He wants 3 targets to be attacked simultaneously by 3 different fleets over a spatial distance that you cannot communicate over. So it's definitely something that's going to take an enormous amount of concentration and coordination, 3-pronged attack as they called it. And I kind of take this that he was really kind of he's like, well, even though I found this guy, let me put him through a stress test, right? This is he capable of doing what I'm asking him to do, while not only testing his limits, but also to see what is going to be the outcome of it. Like, okay, is this guy going to pass out? Is he going to fall down? Is it going to work and stuff? And I think this is a very interesting chapter, because I think there's lots of things that we learn. They constantly are talking about Thrawn's definition of power and Koboth's different definition of power, and they're butting heads on that. So, Megan, whose definition of power do you think is true? Thrawn's more like it's the ability to control thousands of people, and Koboth is it's the ability to mold people. That's kind of where I would say the two differences are. So, do you think one is? I don't want to use the word right or wrong, but which one do you think is aspires to that?
I think. Like, personally, the one that I would identify with more is Koboth's definition, just being able to mold somebody. So then you don't even have to control them, because if you've molded them properly, then they're just going to do the things that you want them to do anyway.
Put them out into the universe and let them do their thing.
Yeah, create your own little minions and then go be free. Yeah. And I think it's once Koboth shows what he's capable of doing, then like Pelion gets like really nervous about his capabilities, because he has a better understanding. He's like, holy Hannah, like they've increased their effectiveness by, I think it was like 40%.
40%.
Yeah, which is outrageous. That's insane. That's right. Huge. And so for him to be like, oh snap, like this is a big deal. And he's a big deal. Now we have to be really worried about this guy, and I don't think Thrawn is as aware as he should be, and so Pelion started to like question that too. So yeah, I prefer his version of power.
Power, yeah.
That was the soul breaking moment though, when Pelion knows that like, it was the Emperor all along. Like, yeah, that we're 40% better. Like, yeah. And then he's so like, hard. I know. And then he had this other quote where he's like, because he was questioning too, did that guy have the right to give himself the master title, right? Yeah. But he was it was pretty impressive. But yeah, it was like a test, right? And I kind of see, like, getting back to that other question you had, like, how Thrawn is testing Koboth or whatever. I think the little assassin things too. I think he's throwing them out there and is like, yeah, they might fail, but this is a test. Let me see, and then we'll ramp it up, and then we'll test again. And I think he's just trying to get it to. It doesn't have to work right the first time. He's just going to get it to work right once. But I feel like it's just little tests.
And I guess that's actually a really good point, because if he delivered the Skywalkers too early, Koboth could be like, well, I've got my toys. I'm not going to do what I've asked you to do. And I think
see you later. Yeah.
Play a little bit later on. So the nice thing I liked about this also is when they were talking about the combat, Thrawn like pulled a ship away and then told them to do different things, and it was almost like he's like, okay, Koboth, tell them to do this, and then radio the show. So he's making adjustments on the fly, and Koboth is able to do it. So I think, yeah, Palion's right to fear him, but I think it's also Thrawn is just, he's like, I need to know how close the abilities of my closest enemy is. Keep my friends close, my enemies closer. And it's really kind of telling about how, you know, he's doing this, and like I said, it's really scary that this attack worked really well. Like, I think they talk about it like, yeah, we've lost one ship and we've decimated the enemy, and he's like, okay, just pull them back. We're not here to get entrenched. Reinforcements can't come. You know, we're in no danger, but we've got it. You know, so I thought that was a really, really cool moment, because it does really set the two, let's call them alphas. They're two alphas, and you start learning more and more, and you see every time they're butting heads, you're like, okay, this is major, right? This is going to have ripples throughout, you know. So I also liked, you know, I talked a little bit about Thrawn's genius and his ability to manipulate all the ships, but I really like how Zahn writes coincidence. Right, so we're looking at different parts, right, of chance, or, you know, how come these people are here? Like in this instance, we had Talon Karrde, and we were corrected. It is Talon Karrde, so I'm gonna apologize for putting an extra A in there. His last name is pronounced Karrde, and should have known because the ship was called the Wild Card. So the Wild Card happened to witness this battle, but it makes perfect sense because he's a smuggler. He's going to be going through areas, and then he witnesses firsthand what Thrawn can do. And while somebody could be like, "Oh, that's just coincidence," or "Oh, you just put him in there, so it's forced," I'm like, no, this is actually really not forced. It makes sense. Like every time in this series that people end up where they are, it could be actual chance and coincidence, but more likely it's like, no, there actually is a reason for them to have been in that area. And I really like that. Next up, what about in that same chapter, right? There's we get a really interesting moment with Mara Jade, and she's like, yo, we promised to deliver that. Let's deliver that. We made a promise, and she harps on that. What do you guys think about that? Did that strike you as kind of odd? Because Talon had to be like, hey, you know, if we go now, maybe we get boarded, or we get, you know, we can't make that delivery. But they'd rather have all of their stuff later than none of their stuff now, right? So what did you think of that, Jesse? Did that strike you as a moment for her? Yes,
it does. She is very strong-willed. We're going to see why she's the way she is later on in the book. She does things for a certain reason, and she's got a code that she lives by, and nobody can break that code. Nobody can break that code. Nobody can force her to do anything she doesn't want to. She's got to come to her opinion, her actions, her opinions herself, without being forced to.
Okay, Scott, did you feel the same way, or did you, when you first read it, were you thinking that, oh, this is just a throwaway line, or
well, because it was like was like a page, you know. So I mean, it wasn't just a line. Yeah, I think it. You know, again, this gets into like what we talked about last time. Like he doesn't, Zahn doesn't give you the whole picture, but he gives you little pieces so that you can, you know, to kind of, you know, get your imagination going. And I think this is just trying to set up who he wants his character to be, and like Jesse said, what she, you know, what her sort of morals or principles, maybe morals isn't the right word, you know, because they're sort of amorphous, but like what her guiding sort of principles are of how she does business and who she is.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way that Zahn wrote her, it adds more depth to her character. So you kind of know that she's not just a throwaway character because he's adding more components to her. And then we see that later on where, like, at the very end of the chapter where she's like, not yet, but soon, but not yet. Right. And you're just like, wait, what? Like, what's going on?
It's like, so adding to that mystery, like, you know, you first meet her and you get a sense, and then you're like, okay, she's very competent, and we know she's competent, but she's like, why is she fixated on this part? So it's like adding a little bit. Now you're like, okay, this is a character trait that is going to either hinder her or make her better or whatever. So you're exactly right. We're getting a bigger picture of who her character is, and I think it's also imparting in us that she is important, and of course she turns out to be a very important character in the whole series and to the rest of the expanded universe as well. All right, so this chapter actually also covers all of the sides. We've got the Imperial side, we've got Talon's smuggler side, and then we also get a little bit of a back to the Falcon with our heroes. And again, the whole thing that I like to talk about, the theme throughout this novel for me is the familiar but new, and we get Leia training with the Force droid, just like we had in A New Hope with Luke trying to tell her, hey, here's a training lightsaber, let's start your training. You need to be able to defend yourself if you're doing this, and we've got to get you trained as a Jedi. And I really like that that imagery, you know, because it takes us back. And then Han comes in and he's like, oh, how's the training going? And Luke's like, yeah, it's all right. She's like, don't even ask. You know, it's like she's just getting wrecked by this thing. But I thought that was super cool. And then we have another moment, if you guys can recall, is after they go about their ways, Luke just decides to, I guess he's bored. He wants to train. But in that moment, he gets so into it that he loses time, and he's almost got, what would you call it? Like a, just lost time. Like he lost 20 minutes. And we're going to see this is going to be a reoccurring thing. But in that moment, he has I don't want to say a revelation or a premonition, but he thinks about Dagobah. Right. So again, we've got the familiar, yet there's going to be a new reason for going there and stuff. So I really like that portion of it. Do you think at that point, do you think it might be a little bit too much leaning on where we've been previously, or is it just the right amount?
It's got to make sense. So I think it's just the right amount. When I was reading that part, I figured Luke was struggling with himself, his confidence. That's why he was reluctant to train Leia, because he doesn't know if he's going to be a good guy or bad guy still. Mm-hmm. I think we keep seeing that when he threw the lightsaber earlier, he had to take a dark move. He couldn't talk his way out of it like the Jedi should. And that's why I think he loses time too, because he's still struggling with himself. If I train Leia, is she going to be good or is she going to be bad? What's going to happen? Are the babies going to be bad? Or are the babies going to be good? He doesn't have any confidence in himself, and that's why I think we're sent back to Dagobah, is where we originally saw him have that inner conflict with himself.
Right.
In the cave.
Yeah.
I think it was, like you said, the familiar but the new. We're going to go to the cave again and see him come out better or come out worse, right?
Yeah, I think it also touches on in chapter 7, like the end of it, he recalls Obi-Wan's words.
Yeah.
Like it was, I thought I could train him something like as well as Yoda. I was wrong.
Yeah.
And then like that's going through his head. And so for him to constantly be thinking that, and his trainer was questioning things, like that's difficult for him. So I definitely think that he's fixated on that. And so because of that, he wants answers, and Dagobah seems to provide answers in some sort of like convoluted kind of way, right? So that's his connection to Yoda. That's his connection, his deep connection to the Force, because that's where he was first trained, right? So he's not obviously, but he's going to go back and he's going to try and figure stuff out. I also thought it was interesting that in this chapter is when we found out that the Jedi, like it became, one of them became a dark Jedi, because they didn't, like, Luke just found out that information in this chapter.
Yes.
Right. So now he's just like, interesting. Yeah.
And this is actually really cool, because they mention, you know, it was before the Clone Wars, and this Jedi from this planet, they became dark Jedi. So again, it's kind of in a way cool to read this after seeing what the prequels were and knowing that this came out. And again, at this point, like when Zahn's writing this, I don't want to say he's fumbling, but he's creating what he's allowed to create. And I think he's done a damn good job of kind of making things plausible. And we hadn't, yes, fine, he can't use the word Sith, but how he's telling the tale and how our heroes know about it, because not all the records are going to be kept and stuff. It's rumor. It's you know, just somebody knew something or whatever. And I think it's pretty cool that there's, you know, obviously Leia know a little bit more because of the diplomatic stuff. But yeah, I think it's really, really well done for a time when he was drawing in the dark. And then Lucas was like, yeah, okay, I'll allow you to say that way. Mind you, you know, once the prequels came up, everything's totally different. The Clone Wars ended up being different, but it's still plausible and works cool in this. And again, Dark Jedi and Jorah's Koboth and clones and stuff like that. So he's made it work. But now that we know more about it, it's obviously, okay, yeah, definitely different. Definitely different. So,
isn't it Leia that mentions Dagobah when she's talking with Han?
Yeah, she mentions because that's where the Dark Jedi from the planet went, or that's, you know what, that's where they ended up. And I think it comes out later on that that Luke he I think he makes the question. He's like, oh well, maybe that's why Yoda went there. You know, maybe Yoda was sent to stop them, and then that's why it. You know, so and again, we know how Yoda got there, but again, it all makes sense. But
it was like a big secret, like, and I feel like Luke was struggling with that, right? Like that he was on Dagobah, Yoda was there, that's where he trained. Like it kind of, you get the sense like he never told anybody, right? Because he ends up telling them, I think, a little bit later, and he's like, for some reason, he internally struggles with like letting people know he was on this planet, right? Like I mean, sort of like, what's the big deal? You went to train with Yoda, he became a Jedi, but like, it's been a secret for a long time.
But the last time he was on Dagobah was when Yoda died, and he said, if you leave now, you'll never be a Jedi. You have to finish your Jedi training.
Right. Yeah.
So that might be, it might be kind of ironic that Leia's sending him there as she's training to search out a Jedi.
I think Luke, in a way, because he believes he's the last of the Jedi, or, you know, as Obi-Wan said, the first of the new, he might not want that to be common knowledge, because he clearly couldn't search all of Dagobah. He was on that one spot. So what if there is more to it? And if people found out, they'd be like, okay, yeah, we're going to go. And if Yoda was there, and we all know Yoda's a great Jedi master, or you know, it might become, you know, people might become fixated with it. So in a way, you might want to keep it on the down low that's where it was. But you're absolutely right. It does come out later on in the other chapters. So yeah, onward to chapter 10, because I think we covered that in chapter 9 nicely. There's a lot in that particular chapter to do, and I really liked how each group had something you know, to do in that chapter, or was brought up in that chapter. So I think this chapter is really cool. Again, we get to some more of the action.
It's a trap.
Yeah, the second one here. And that's actually perfect, because is this a better trap and a better setup for the trap? You know, because now our heroes are separated, right? And they pull a fast one. They're like, hey, yeah, let's set them up and have Chewie fly in and save them again. Wait a minute, that's not my Falcon. That's not my YT 1300 Corellian freighter, right? All of a sudden, they somehow, could you imagine, you go and you get a ship, paint it similar enough to the Millennium Falcon? It'd be like running to your car, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not my black whatever car. You know, it looks very similar, but it's not it. So I'm like, yo, that's.
I literally do that like once a week.
Yeah.
Why is my?
Yeah.
That's mine.
But the cool thing is, at this point here, we have, or we're seeing, I think, and you guys can agree or disagree with me, but I think we'll be unanimous in it, is that Leia is starting to use her power. She's coming into her own a little bit more. She's more in tune with the Force, even though they might not be saying a lot of stuff. She's actively using it and tuning in. So she's the one that kind of is just like, hey, wait a minute, Wedge, wait a minute, Han, something's not right. And they're like, no, come on, let's go. Chewie can't stay there all day or whatever. And then it's the observation, like, hey, why is he using the underbarrel, the underbelly cannon? And then they're like, hey, how come they're not shooting? So I really like that Leia was the one to figure it out, and she's the one, I think, that comes up with the plan, right? Yeah. She's like, we all have to run together and stuff. So again, it's like, it's cool that we're seeing every character kind of get their own little moment to shine in each of these chapters. And of course, we had Wedge Antilles again. We saw Wedge in, I think it was chapter 2 with Han, and then we're seeing him. So again, here's a character from the movies that had like 1 or 2 lines. You know, we might not be able to pick him out of a lineup, but now he's in here and he's still, you know, he's getting his dialogue and character moment. So it's real. I thought that was really cool. Chapter, but also, like I said, I did feel a little bit sense of fear. I'm like, if they could pull this off, right? They pulled this trap. They, like, what are they capable of? Like if they didn't want them alive, they're dead for sure. You know, if this was not a capture and bring them in alive situation, they're done. These guys are smart. They're tactical. You know, and with Thrawn being, you know, their master or their moving piece, wow, it's pretty cool. So did you guys have any thoughts on that for 10? Because there's a lot goes on in 10.
I like Han jumping to action again, not hesitating. He what did he do? He cut the coolant
with
the lightsaber. With the lightsaber. And not only did he cut it, killing everybody inside, he sent up a smoke screen so his cavalry would come in and take care of everybody else, right? Like, way to go, Han, protecting.
And I really like that. I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the notes I took. I'm like, I really like that Han is great at improvising, and this goes again right back to this scene made me think of Empire, where he cuts open the tauntaun and he puts Luke in. He's like, well, you're gonna die, buddy, so let me just get you in there. So it's like, just like, you know, Han Solo may not be book smart, but this is the guy that he can jerry rig anything. He thinks so fast on his feet, and like I said, he's never stuck. Like, you're never gonna have a moment where Han is gonna be like deer in the headlights. You know, like he can assess a situation and he will act even if the action is wrong. Like, remember in Empire,
fine. Everyone's fine.
The gun and he starts shooting at Vader. Like, he sees Darth Vader. He knows how bad. He's just like, well, screw it, I'm taking the shots. And then Vader just pulls. So like anybody else would have been like, all right, let me just put my gun down. Don't kill me, Vader. You know. And it was just, so Han Solo, yes, like no force, no powers, but nobody's pushing him around and stuff. Love it. Just super cool. Really great moment. Let's talk a little bit about more of the political thing, because again, we see Akbar just getting outmaneuvered on Coruscant and stuff. The poor guy. and we see that Leia is just like, yeah, maybe this is not his arena. He's a general. He's good at maneuvering people and ships and stuff, not this type of, you know, thrust, counter thrust, political machinations. And I think I took a little quote here, and it's kind of a little bit funny, but it's, you know, Bosch for Leia is nipping at his heels. And again, this dog imagery is just keeps coming up. Like the poor Bothans, like I know they kind of look like dogs in some of these art, but but again, just that line, he's nipping at his heels. I'm like, okay, you're really driving that imagery in of them and stuff, right? So yeah, pretty cool chapter. And then we've got some other big, maybe not big. Like I think I mentioned Han's character changing, but he's the first guy to be like, hey, why do we have to tell Coruscant where we're going? Let's get somebody who can slice into the communications. He falls right back into Smuggler Han as well, right?
Smuggler,
you know, and it's again keeping true, but this time he's doing it again. He wants to protect Leia and his kids, and I really think that is just.
And where are we going?
Yeah.
We're going to Lando.
Yeah, and yeah, when you need someone you can't trust, Lando knows a guy, and I trust Lando. So it all comes back. Yeah, it's super cool. Again, Zahn's writing these guys like I'm not missing a beat. I'm not questioning any of the moves that he's making writing the characters. You know, sometimes you read something and somebody's like, I don't know if Batman would do that or Spider-Man would do that or whatever. Like you're just like, this is questionable, but this feels exactly like what these characters would do and who they are. And most of the stuff is a logical projection. Like we've talked about Han, you know, but we also talk about Luke. Like he's still not that confident guy that saved everything. He's fallen back and stuff like that. And he's still got a little bit of that trauma and he feels lost and maybe not abandoned, but he mentions it himself, orphaned and stuff, and he's questioning. So I really like that those are traits that he's pulling back up. And we see again for a character like Leia, the confidence and the ability to be like, yeah, okay, I'm doing too much, but I can't stop. You know, she's always, you know, gonna do the best for everybody and think of herself last. So she's kind of selfless and stuff. So yeah, so far Zahn just nailing it, right? He's got everything good. All right, on to chapter 11. In chapter 11, we are kind of the return to Dagobah. Right, this is Luke taking his X-wing with R2 and stuff. Lots of new information. Again, some of it's familiar, but obviously the big takeaway from this is the scene in the cave. So, what did you guys think of that?
This is 1991's version of Star Wars What If, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, what if like things didn't go the same way and someone snatches that lightsaber right out of the air and into the pit you go. Like it was it was kind of cool. Like I don't know that I totally understood it. I liked it, but like it was pretty cool.
So okay, so let's work on that. What part would you say you didn't understand?
I guess I just didn't know where it was going, right? Like I mean I get it, like I don't know if it was just like I said, I mean, it was like an alternate reality, but like, why do we need that, or why would it have happened? Like, I guess I was just looking for more information.
Okay, so anybody else want to jump in before I?
It's like the opposite chapter from what was it? Was it Empire Strikes Back when we first saw Luke?
Yep.
Yeah. So when Luke originally lands on Dagobah, he sees jungle everywhere. And then in the jungle, he sees a pristine hut where Yoda lives. When he gets there this time, he sees the hut, but it's destroyed.
Yep, it's all jungle. Right? The forest is retaken. Yeah.
And he didn't realize that because where he grew up in the desert, nothing gets destroyed. It just stays where it is. There's no growth. It's just dry desert. When he enters the cave, he's expecting the worst. Originally in Empire, didn't he just go in all cocky and gonna get the job done?
A little bit, and he took his weapons, even though Yoda said he wouldn't need them, so he didn't kind of listen to Yoda.
And he saw a vision of the future, and this time he saw a vision of the past.
Yeah.
And in that vision, in the future, he won. In this one, he lost. So it's kind of like mirror opposites from Empire Strikes Back and the first time he visited Dagobah to the second time.
Yeah,
that's what I took away. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. No. It also adds in like the foreshadowing of like the woman snatching the thing out of the air, and you're like, wait, who that? And then right, and then later on, you're like, that's who that is. Yeah. So it sets it up a little bit where you're just like, I'm confused. Like I was totally like you, Scott. I was like, wait, what's going on? I remember the scene perfectly from the movie, and there was no lady. Like they were dancers, but I didn't remember a lady snatching anything, right? Yeah. So I think
you guys touched on so many great things and stuff. So it's really cool because the nice thing that if you look at Star Wars, the 6 movies, but let's focus on the original trilogy. There's one thing that we never get in those movies, and we never get flashbacks. Yeah. A lot of movies do flashbacks. Star Wars never does flashbacks. And Yoda made a line in Empire that he's like, hard to see the future is, right? And it's clouded, and he says, so he says to Luke when he goes in the caves, you take in there what you have. It's like you are bringing your baggage in there. So in that scene, both scenes from the first one from the movie and this one, it is foreshadowing. So he is seeing a vision of a possible future, but both visions that he has, he doesn't understand them because it's clouded. So him at the time when he fights Vader and he cuts Vader's head off and he sees his face, you're like, what the hell is that? Right? But it's just like, again, most times you could say, you wear the face of your father, right? That's like, it's not, he wasn't seeing him, he's seeing, well, that is me, and that equals Vader's my father. Again, at that point, we didn't know that watching it, right? But we see that here. And then in this one, even though it's a past event, right? The Force is showing him that there's something that is going to change or impede you. It's going to stop you from succeeding. This is a moment and Luke says, I've seen this. I'm not going to play your game. I've done this. I have passed this test. But when that happens, he's like, wait a minute. I can't pass this test without my lightsaber. Somebody else has it. It's just saying that there is going to be an interruption to you. So even though he's brought in these feelings, and that's the Force kind of showing him what those feelings are, because a couple times in the chapters, like there's always like, oh, something's bothering Luke, oh, he'll tell us when he's ready and stuff, and I think he's internalizing these things. And even when he gets to Dagobah, he says, there's this pressure on the back of my neck, there's something I'm not, it doesn't feel right, but it's kind of like that almost like that warning, that innate sense and stuff like that Jedi in this have, like, before somebody shoots their blaster, Jedi can draw their lightsaber and deflect it. So it's almost like that, but for a future event. So it was right to confuse, but it was also right to set up the stage for stuff to come. I think there was one other thing that was very interesting, because we don't really get a sense of the distance in the movie to where the cave was to Yoda's hut, and now we almost get the sense that it's like 50 yards away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. So then all of a sudden you start thinking, why would Yoda build his hut next to a dark side nexus? Right. So why do you guys think that would have been?
Did they explain it later on? I thought they did, where they said, or maybe in my brain, I don't know. But didn't he make his hut there because it would mask his presence with the dark, like the darkness would mask his own presence, so nobody would know that he was there?
The Jedi balance thing, right? You got to
Jedi balance.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I was thinking it like at first what you said, Megan, but I reread it and I think it's more like this is a big pocket of dark side. If I put myself beside it with the light side, I will counter it, and then there will be there will be no reading. So anybody flying over Dagobah will be like, oh, well, geez, this planet's got nothing. But they've left that dark side nexus. People like any dark side user or dark Jedi would be drawn to it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's true. That's
like,
true.
yeah, now he's doing so. It's really cool. And again, that Luke says, it's like, hey, maybe I didn't realize that dark feeling, that dark cloud pushing on me, because maybe Yoda's presence would stop that. So again, I thought really brilliant writing and stuff in that, because it really makes you start thinking about, wow, like what could Yoda have been doing like that whole time, right? So I thought, again, just super, super cool. Gives us a new way and a new appreciation of Yoda, again, before the prequels, right? So this is stuff that, you know, reading this, you'd be like, oh man, yeah, Yoda just looking out for the galaxy, even on Dagobah. Like, it's like, could you imagine you had to sit and live in that place because of that? You'd be like, yeah, no, I think I'd want to, you know, a little bit better digs if I was a Jedi Master, you know. But I guess if you want to hide, right, that's one place to hide. So great chapter. Again, character development, more stuff about the Force and foreshadowing. So on to chapter 12. We're moving right along. The familiar and yet different. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's Lando with an even bigger scheme. And even a bigger, more challenging way to make money. Does this guy do anything that's easy? You know, Cloud City sounded like the most far-fetched thing, and now he's like, oh, here, let's mine this planet that it's so hot that the ships can't land and it'll shear itself, and the city's got to move in the shadow of other things. So what a cool description of Nomad City, a city that quite literally moves. But I got to say, the first impression for me was, how cool do you think those shield ships would look?
Maybe like a big umbrella.
Cool? Yeah, are they cool? They're funny looking.
Maybe a big umbrella.
I was thinking like an upside down like radar dish, or like a billowing dress.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the radar dish is better.
Yeah, is better. I just thought it was super, like, it's just a cool idea, like, because they even talk about how small the Falcon is, you know, when it comes up. So I thought that was neat imagery, anyways, for Star Wars. Again, painting a picture that now we haven't seen any planets or anything quite like this before. So I thought that was really cool. Anything else?
It's got to be quite large, because
huge.
Spoiler: Luke came flying by, and they didn't know who it was at first until he's like, "Hey, it's me, Han. What's going on? What are you doing here?" Right?
Yeah.
Like, that was cool. Oh, I guess we kind of skipped a little bit of a big thing for the previous chapter. So let's talk a little bit about again how cool it is and how plausible. Again, he finds something in the cave, and R2's like, "Oh, I think I saw Lando maybe had something like that," right? Or, hey, Lando knows a lot of people, so he's the one to get information with. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about coincidence and chance. Now we've got our heroes all back together again on a new location, but it makes kind of sense to me. It's like, it's not super forced. It's all a legitimate reason for them to have come to the decision and the timing to get to Lando, because they've gone their separate ways, and then they're meeting up. So that's why Luke is there. So I thought that was really cool. My favorite moment in this one was the banter between R2-D2 and C-3PO, when Leia's like, "Oh, let's find out if this is really Luke in his X-wing," and they're like, "Oh, somebody wants to say hi to you," and then R2, "Is that you?" "What do you mean? Who else could it be?" And they go into this whole banter, and I love how he writes it, because we never get to hear, or he doesn't write out what R2 says, and he doesn't write out what Chewbacca says, but it's in the responses of the characters, C-3PO's responses, that he's kind of repeating it, and I think he's just nailed it. So I thought that was just such a really cute, cool moment. You know,
which is how the movie is too, right? Like, you know, like Han and Chewie are always having. You know, you have the two-way conversation via the responses and 3PO and R2. So it just seems so natural. And I think, you know, that can be difficult, but like, I think he nails those relationships and those conversations where it just feels like, again, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did think it was a little bit weird that Leia couldn't tell that it was Luke, though. I thought that was a little bit strange.
Well, I think she did tell. She's like, I'm almost certain. And Han's like, that's not good enough because they brought a Falcon in. And maybe because he doesn't know what their capabilities are. So he's like, we've got to be 100% here. So I did kind of like, again, now we've got, and I think even Han says it. He's like, never thought I'd be paranoid or whatever. But he's at, because he kept the Falcon's guns trained on Luke the whole time until they sorted it out and stuff. And I like I said, I can't tell you how much I like overprotective Han. You know, it's just like we're seeing this, you know, like, his kids aren't even born yet, so could you imagine how he's gonna be when they're born and little and all that stuff? So yeah, it was pretty cool. Any other things stand out for chapter 12? This is well,
I mean, it ends with it's a trap.
Yeah. And we get a little bit more space combat, so that's also, again, this is kind of the setup for chapter 13, and we get a nice visitor in that they meet Lando, they get clearance, and all of a sudden they're like, what, a Star Destroyer is here, right? So I called this chapter Hail, Hail, the gang's all here, and that means trouble will ensue. You put more, the more these guys get together, the more something bad is going to happen. So the Empire shows up. We've got a quickening of the pace. I think the book really starts to ramp up in chapter 13 again once we get these things. And now again, we see the Empire almost making what seems like a desperate move, but our heroes have no idea what and why they're doing it, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. We mentioned Luke losing time. So he loses time again in this moment, and something pretty big happens. What'd you guys think of that moment?
Insane.
Insane, yeah.
Yeah, like Koboth calls out to Luke, and doesn't Luke originally think it's Ben?
Yep.
Because he's never had anybody talk to him through the Force except Ben and Leia.
Yep.
So he questions himself, Ben, and then he's like, wait, no. It's not Ben. Ben's gone. And then he blacks out.
He wants it to be Ben, I think.
He wants it to be Ben. He wants to be the student again. He doesn't want to be the teacher. He doesn't have the confidence to be the teacher. So he's like, Ben, is that you? No, it's somebody else. So I think that sparks him to seek out who this is. Like I've heard inklings of a dark Jedi. I've heard I want to go meet somebody else like me.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and he says it, or Koboth says it pretty explicitly during his little Force phone call, where he says, "Find him, and the Jedi will rise again." So, like, why wouldn't Luke go explore that avenue, right? Where he can be like, "Well, shoot, I want the Jedi to rise again. Then it's not just me, like with all of this on my shoulders. Then other people can share the load." So,
yeah, it's pretty cool. I did think. Oh, Scott, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
All right. So there was one thing that struck me. Is remember when Luke decides to enter the minds of the TIE fighter pilots, and he has that moment. He's like, I wonder if this is how Jedi of old fought. And I think they make a comment that is like, oh, this is going to be his first battle as a fully fledged Jedi Knight, and this first thing is like, oh, I'm going to muddle these guys' minds, and you blow them up. So it's almost like you're like, ooh, you just want to use the Force and outfly them and shoot them down and stuff like that and whatnot. So, but he does have that moment of is this right? And I think it's almost like when I initially had read it, I was like, hey, maybe the only reason Koboth can contact him is because he's almost choosing to do a dark side thing, and that makes
opens up the channel.
Or he's like stretching himself already, and so his defenses are weaker and more open to things.
So so I think there's definitely some underpinnings going on there. And now while this battle is going on, with the aftermath, we get another one of these great power struggles between Thrawn and Koboth, and like Thrawn's like, well, how did the mission go? Oh, it's successful. I got you what you wanted. I got you 51. And Thrawn's like, oh, very good. It's like, well, how come you looked a little bit tired there? He's like, oh, I wasn't tired. I was talking to Luke Skywalker. And Thrawn loses his shit. Yeah. He's like, what? Luke Skywalker is there? It's like, oh yeah, don't worry. I told you I would deal with Skywalker. And then again, they butt heads, and I just love the description of these confrontations. You know, like you could just really feel like the ferocity, and it's bottled because they're not yelling at each other. They're just kind of like, you know, like sparring, you know, just like, I've got a one up on you because I know Luke was there and you didn't know that, and you keep asking me if I've done the task, and I clearly did the task. So we've got Thrawn, who doesn't, you know, like Joruus having information, but then Joruus doesn't like Thrawn questioning his ability. So we keep having these layers added to these characters. I think it's just wicked.
Koboth is threatening Thrawn's ego and his position, right? Like, is Thrawn in charge or is Koboth in charge, right?
Yeah.
Because from an outside perspective, Koboth is controlling his fleet from across the universe.
Yep.
Is he also controlling this ship we're on too?
Yeah.
Right. I found it interesting when Koboth's like, I told you I'd deal with Luke Skywalker myself. It's not you. You just get me him. I'll take care of him.
Yeah.
And then I believe Thrawn says something along the lines of, I trust you.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I trust you.
Army. Yeah.
Yeah. I trust you, but I've got this lizard here, so I don't, like, he's telling him what he wants to hear.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. It's the back and forth. It's the power struggle. Like,
the power struggle between the two.
He had it was a little Vader moment, though, because he said, you know, after he was gone, you know, he was talking about, you know, like in the Cloud City of altering the deal, you know, pray I don't alter it again, because he's like, you know, maybe we'll give him Skywalker, maybe we won't, maybe we'll just kill him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so he's like, you know, it's his first little, I mean, he's not that he's not vindictive, but like it was his first little move where he's like, yeah, I'm changing. I'm not, you know, we had a deal, but I'm going to break it.
Yeah. Because maybe it's at that moment that he maybe is, like Jesse said, he's fearing. He's like, what if I don't want to give him Skywalker, because then that might be too much for me to control, because Thrawn feels like he's got everything under control at this moment, right?
And how does Thrawn know that Koboth isn't in his mind as well? Like, how does he know he's not manipulating Thrawn?
He believes in his research and those the lizards, right? So at this point, we know they work. He knows they work, but he probably has no reason to doubt that. So I think that's very cool. But again, maybe there might be some part of somebody on the ship saying, hey, well, this guy, this Jedi Master guy is super powerful. Maybe Paleon's got like second guessing. He's like, wow, like I know that Thrawn's a genius, but this guy's a madman, and I don't want.
He can be manipulating Thrawn without using the Force, right? Like if all his allies on his ship turn against him, who's Thrawn, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you see it at the end of the chapter, chapter 13, where Pelion is kind of he's talking to Thrawn. He's like, you know, maybe we shouldn't like kill Skywalker so quickly, because then like Koboth is just gonna peace, right? And like, we kind of need him. Yeah. And then Thrawn's like, interesting point.
Yeah.
All right, fine.
He's like, yes, I will take that. Yeah. So again, we see Pelion just kind of again rising up in the ranks a little bit in Thrawn's eyes and stuff, or even if it's just our eyes, we know that he's not like any of these other Imperial people that are kind of painted with that simpleton brush or whatever. But yeah, definitely really cool chapter, getting more views into the insight of the bad guys and stuff. So yeah, we got chapter 14. Now this is where we are back to the heroes, and the heroes are now going, oh crap, man, like how did the Empire find us here? Nobody knew we were coming here. We're the target. And they're so fixated on themselves that they don't realize that Lando's the one that's been had. So they're not even thinking about what Thrawn could be doing with those mole miners. Lando's like, well, maybe he wants to cripple my mining operation. right? And stuff. There's one cool line in that I really dug. Lando says, "Just because I'm respectable doesn't mean I'm out of touch." And this is when they're talking about. He's like, "No, they weren't after you because there's no bounty on you guys.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, I know this stuff." I'm like, "How do you know this, Lando?" Like, "Oh, hey, don't insult me. Just because I'm respectable, I've still got fingers all over and stuff." And whatnot. So I thought that was a really cool Lando moment that kind of, and again, using logic, right? We already know that there's bounty hunters, and we've seen people have prices on their head throughout Star Wars. So it's a good way to get that information. So now they have to look past that and say, okay, what was Thrawn doing here? What is the, what was his game and stuff.
It shows more of Lando's character too, that he's still looking out for his friends, right? He's like, "Don't worry, Leia, there's no bounty on you because I'm listening out for my friends," right? Like, yeah. Oh, and if there was a bounty, I bet he'd be on that phone calling Leia and being like, "Hey,
watch out! There's a bounty." Yeah. So, yeah. So I think this particular chapter as well, I think we start seeing a lot of the pieces of the puzzle start kind of forming and stuff. We see, Luke now can ask Lando about the remote that he
transmitter,
found,
yeah,
right, the transmitter, right, and then that leads to them talking about, oh, where did you find it? Oh, found it on Dagobah. Oh, the Dark Jedi from Befast went to Dagobah. Oh, really? Okay, if there was a Dark Jedi, then that means that this device could have been a Clone Wars or pre-Clone Wars era. What do they call it?
Beck and call.
Slave drive or
slave circuit.
Slave circuit, yeah. And then they're like, holy smokes! That if enough of these ships have these devices, they can come wherever you call them to. I'm like, whoa, that sounds pretty cool. And then Lando describes what it's used for, but then he drops the big hint that he's like, yeah, mine didn't work because the Empire turned it off. That's how I couldn't. My ship didn't come to me on Cloud City and stuff. So you're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. We're getting these little tidbits of information, but then we start seeing, like, almost like if this was a video game. It's like, oh, okay, now the quest is coming in, and we've got the slave ship. Okay, now we have to find out what is slaved to it. Oh, and now we've got a couple of different locales to go to, but we're being tracked. So what plan do we come up with to throw not only the Empire off, but also the Republic, because maybe that's where the information is coming. And then we got this really cool, Chewie speaks up and he's like, hey, why don't we go to Kashyyyk, right? Lando's like, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy that maybe I can get you to Talon Karrde. Talon Karrde. and then they even talk about modifying 3PO. So we've got this really cool plan taking shape. Like, these guys are no longer running. They're like, okay, let's control this and let's see what we're gonna do. Lando has the great line. He's like, I know many slicers, but there's none that I would trust. So that was kind of cool. Saying, well, but maybe heard about this guy named Talon, and he's supposed to be honorable. So if we can get in contact with him, and then it ties right back into Han saying, oh, I've been trying to get in contact with him because the Republic needs smugglers. So all of this stuff, again, kind of seems coincidental, but he's laid all the breadcrumbs out there. And then when he ties it all together, you're just like, oh, yeah, no, I'm buying this. I'm on board. He didn't just drop something one chapter before and then it happens in the next chapter just because, right? So I thought that was really, really cool.
Classic mistake, though. Don't split the party.
Yeah, that's
again.
True. But you know what? Again, when you look back at the movies, they were always splitting the party. They were always off going somewhere. Like, again, Empire Strikes Back. The I'll get Leia out on my own, and then Luke's like, okay, I'm gonna go to Dagobah. There's I'm going to this. But yeah, that's when bad stuff happens. But we need the bad stuff happen so our heroes can shine, right? So so that was pretty awesome. So originally, when they come up with this plan, were you guys thinking it was too much or too bonkers, or did it sound like a good plan? Megan, what did you think when you first read it?
I thought it was great. I was like, oh, this is excellent. Plus, like Kashyyyk, I would love to read about Kashyyyk and like those cities in the trees.
Yeah.
I thought they did a good job, and then we find out no.
I was gonna say it was like a great plan, and I loved it until I got to the next chapter. And the bad guy figures it out in like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
5 seconds, more like
it. And I'm like, how the hell
for a minute?
Yeah, but they explain it so well that you're like, I see how he could have figured it out instead of just like, well, that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
right? He
that's...
explains the switcheroo and he explains the whole thing. He's like, the only way this would work is this and this and this, and like even Pelion's like, what?
Yeah,
and so he explains it more, and you're like, I get it. Okay, makes sense.
And that's so that's perfect because it brings us right into chapter 15, because literally chapter 15 is the Thrawn explaining the musical chairs on the ships. He's like, clearly there's 2 ships, and if they were only docked for this amount of time, that means it would transfer 2 people, not 3 or 4, and these people will stay. And then Pelion's like, how did you come up with
this chapter is like when you do those puzzle books and then they have the answers at the back. Yeah, it's like it's like if you flip to the back and you're like, oh, that's how they did that. You know what I mean? Chapter 15 is like the puzzle solver for 14.
For 14, exactly. So our heroes think they're so smart, but they have not run into Thrawn or anybody of that caliber yet. And again, it just goes to show you that Thrawn is playing a game and everybody else is eating glue. Eating white glue. We're doing crafts while Thrawn is playing like 4 people in chess, all at the same time. So it's pretty funny. Chapter 16 here. Then we've got
a trap.
It's a trap again. But wow, what a really smart trap. He sets it up a couple chapters before. He's like, hey, let's intercept Luke. We know Luke is going to leave and he's going to go look for Joruus C'baoth, or he's going to look for that Dark Jedi that contacted him. We know what hyperspace lane he's going to take, because why would he think to take another one? So let's set up this Imperial search and seizure, and he's going to be pulled out of hyperspace by the interdictor ship. And wow, what a cool moment. So let me ask you guys,
I love that technology, man. Like because they have hyperspace and everything else, and you think, we're not there yet, obviously, in 2021, but like the fact that, they're traveling, they're jumping, but they also have the technology to create like a magnetic field or an energy field or something that literally, like a gravity field that like doesn't matter how fast you're going, it's going to stop. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
And we've seen, I don't know, Scott, did you finish watching Rebels? Because they used that a couple times in Rebels. And I
didn't. So this is the first I saw it. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, you know what? You're gonna have to definitely maybe do a Google search of or I'll send you a link with a really cool battle with where they use that. But they were cool in Rebels and stuff. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this point, guys. At this moment, if you can remember back to reading it, at this point, were you thinking, is Thrawn seeming too omnipotent? Like at this point, are you thinking this guy is just too smart, or he just knows like absolutely everything?
At this point, I think he underestimated Luke and the Jedi. Remember, I said put a bookmark in that. Okay. I think at this point is where he's like, I got Luke no matter what. He's going to be in my possession, and a Jedi outsmarted him by doing something that probably shouldn't have worked. Because I believe Luke says too, this isn't going to work, but this is the last shot I have. I got to shoot these missiles out and then change my trajectory. So I think he underestimated Luke at that point, or Jedis at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. I would agree, because he didn't choose to go after Luke himself. He was like, no, we're going to send some of our minion people to go acquire him.
But it's because they couldn't, they had the
they had the other thing, right?
They had the other thing. So he can't change his big plan, right? But also the reason I kind of bring that up is because you've got this moment where he's like, oh no, Pelion, we've got Luke. It's just a matter of time. And the whole thing is like, since he did this maneuver, he basically has burned out his hyperspace something. So we just have to find his trajectory, his last known light speed trajectory, and we have him. But you're like, how do you know? What if Luke had modified his X-wing so that it wouldn't have done that? So I'm just thinking at this point, I'm like, wow, this guy seems like God level intellect.
Luke pulled that maneuver out of his butt, right? Like, I mean, he just like made it up, and he did it, right? Like, he fooled him. But then, like 5 seconds later, he's like, "Yeah, but this is what happens when you do that maneuver." It's like, Thrawn, how many times have you done that maneuver? Like,
exactly.
you know, like you're cracking your hyperdrive, and like, it's like,
how much experience do you have with X-wings?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that's only that for me. That was at that one moment where I was like, okay, maybe they've started painting this guy with a brush that he just knows too much.
I think he knows just the right amount, because backtracking to chapter 15 at the very end, Pelion is in the what are we going to call it? The artifact room, the trophy room with Thrawn, and as Pelion's leaving, everything goes. The holograms all close except one, and Pelion asks, "What was it? What's this one? Why do you have this one? Why is this one real?" They go on, tell the story, and then Pelion says, "Well, I bet you've learned from it because you have the real object in your hands now. I bet you learned from your mistakes." He said, "No, I can't. I destroyed the whole planet."
Yeah.
Right? He just wiped out the whole planet because he didn't understand it. Yeah. So, yes, I believe he would know an X-Wing because that's his main opponent, right? The Rebellion.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
No, he would know that ship inside and out.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very, very good point. All right, so Luke, not Luke, sorry, Thrawn. His anger boils over at that poor tech.
Yeah.
Justified. What did he call it? Do you know the difference between a mistake?
I read it down. An error and a mistake.
An error and a mistake, and you're like, God damn! Like this dude is just. This guy's like, what's colder than ice? Like, this guy is just like, wow. Like,
well, that said, somebody else did the dirty work, right?
Yeah.
Right, but that person knew exactly what to do without. Again, he just said Rook, and Rook was there, and then he did like not even a shoulder tap or whatever, and it's like like the last time.
He finger almost lazily and pointed.
Yeah. You just like I just go.
That one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, and then he wrote. Then he said, "Dispose of it."
Dispose of it. Yeah.
Dispose of it.
Yeah.
God.
Now, do you think he took his aggression out on what was his name? I think it was Peterson. Chris Peterson.
Yeah.
Do you think he took his aggression out on Chris Peterson because he couldn't kill Luke? Like, do you think it was like, oh, I can't kill Luke, so I'm going to kill this poor guy that just made an error, but I'm blowing it out of proportion?
I think he's definitely, at this point, we see there's this kind of genius level intellect, but on that flip side, there's intense, volatile anger. I don't think it's because he's taking it out because he couldn't kill Luke. I think he's taking it out because he, like you said, maybe he underestimated him, or he's just like, I didn't think the Jedi would know how to do that, and now I can't delay my plan because I have to go and attack the shipyard. But
did Thrawn make an error, or did he make a mistake?
I don't think
in underestimating Luke.
Yeah.
And was that him?
Maybe. Yeah.
Was that him just like, you know what? I'm never going to make that mistake again. I'm going to kill the error right here. It ends now.
But then, but technically speaking, like the guy, Luke could pull that same maneuver again. Like, like it's at the only learning Thrawn, I would say, from that moment would be to be like, oh, let's have 2 tractor beams. So we'd have to have 2 Star Destroyers or capital ships or whatever, right? But yeah, it's definitely an interesting moment. And another look again, we are seeing this pattern of Thrawn's activity that's really painting this picture. And they do always talk about his gleaming red eyes, and they're red obviously for a reason. Like this, like he's just got that anger, right? And there's no better color than red for anger, right?
You're seeing red, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's seeing red all the time.
He's seeing red all the time. All right, so we flipped to chapter 17. Chapter 17, we've got Luke trying everything he can to fix his X-wing. R2's giving him schematics, and they're literally trying to jerry-rig what we can. But the most important part of this chapter here, I think, is we get Leia gets to Kashyyyk, right? And we finally get a cool description of not only what this Wookiee village looks like, but we meet our first 2 other Wookiees. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce the full name, but we have Ralra and Salporin. And I just love the fact that Chewie had a lifelong childhood friend. Right? I thought that was really, really cool. And I love Leia getting her foot in her mouth when she's saying, "Hey, Chewie, did you always have a speech impediment? That's why I couldn't explain it." And Ralra's like, "No, I actually have a speech impediment." So could you imagine how bad you would feel after
nice diplomat right there, right?
Nice diplomat, you know? So she really stepped in it. But a brilliant move, really, from a writing standpoint, because now you have a character that we, as the readers, can read what the Wookiee's saying, and it's just really cool that we don't have to now. Leia doesn't have to repeat for Chewie, Salporin, and this person. So it's like, it's really cool. And then even or Ralra even starts saying, "Oh no, Chewie speaks fine English," so he's finishing Chewie sentences and stuff. So I thought that was really, really cool.
Part of me wanted Chewie to turn to Leia and say, "Don't tell Han." Don't tell Han. Don't tell Han.
That would be pretty awesome.
Just between us.
Yeah. We have now bonded. Okay.
So what did you guys think of the description of Kashyyyk?
It was described as like a giant tree fort that I kind of wanted to go and hang out. Like you see tree forts in what Swiss Family Robinsons, the ones with I wanted to go hang out there and see what it was all about. Right.
Yeah. I like how Leia asked the question. She's like, "Oh, so how are these buildings? Are they up? Are they on repulsor lifts? Are they up?" And then they're like, "No, that's the Worcestershire tree or whatever it was called, And she's like, "What? Like Worcestershire sauce? What?" And then she looks at it, and it's vines, and the description is, "Oh no, when the 2 branches collide with each other, they grow into one." And I'm like, man, that must look super
intertwined, cool. Like a spider web almost. Right?
Yeah. So I think the description of that was fantastic, and I think, we did end up seeing Kashyyyk in Revenge of the Sith, but the original idea for Return of the Jedi was they wanted to have that battle on Kashyyyk, but they couldn't afford to do it back then. And I will delve into my video game nerdiness, but there was a Star Wars game that came out, and they did Kashyyyk amazingly. It's called Jedi Fallen Order, and wow, it's just super huge. They really captured this jungle planet with giant trees and very unique wildlife and stuff. So that was pretty cool. One of the interesting things here that I found was the end of that chapter where Leia thinks she sees one of the Nagari. Right. So now they're changing tactics all of a sudden. Right now they are like, "Oh, let's play with our prey. Let's play with our target." Right. So I thought that was another hey, that's cool. These guys are trying something new, and it puts the whole village on high alert. So much so that I almost got the feeling that after the alert went down, they're like, this person is just seeing things. So now Leia doesn't have that like she's cast a little bit of doubt. They've cast a little bit of doubt on her.
Which is exactly what they wanted her to think, right? Like,
yeah,
it was like I love the change in the tactics. Like again, it's like you know, again, the stormtroopers are like, dude, come on, just shoot straight. But like these guys are like they get a fake Falcon, right? Like where do you pick up a Millennium Falcon, right? Like but they went through that effort. It didn't work, but like they're trying, right?
Trying,
like, and now they're doing a little peekaboo, you know, like what they see? No, she's crazy.
Yeah, they searched the whole place. They put the whole thing on high alert, you know. Yeah,
I've reread that chapter. How scary would it be for 3 Wookiees breaking down that door to that house and going in and clearing it out? Like that to me would be scary.
Yeah.
Imagine what the No Gray are thinking, right? And they're just run away.
We're not even there. We're not even there. Yeah. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So 17 was a good chapter because we are now seeing another new planet that we're actually on, and we're getting description of and new characters and Wookiee characters. Who doesn't like Wookiees? What's better than one Wookiee? Clearly a whole planet of Wookiees. All right, so back to chapter 18. Again, we find Luke, he is drifting in space, and it's not looking good for him. But the wild card finds Luke Skywalker. Did any of you guys see that coming? Yeah.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. I thought that was a very good, shall we say, a little bit of a twist, because we did have Thrawn mentioning, he's like, okay, hire some of the people we know in this area to go search for them. And he mentioned it, but then there was never anything of that. But then as we read the rest of the chapter, we find out that it was not coincidence.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, Mara decided to pull us into this hyperspace, or pull us out of hyperspace around this point. And at that point, I think, is it before or after that they basically just stun Luke? They're just like, hey, come on board. And then they just shot the dude or whatever.
It's like, hey, come to dinner. Like, hey.
Yeah. And you're just like, dude, come on. How did you, and then later when Luke wakes up, this is, I guess, kind of fast forward because chapter 18 is kind of short. So the bulk of chapter 18 is Luke gets found and then he gets stunned. Right? That's basically it. The poor guy.
And he knows it's a trap too, because he's asking probing questions to the person talking.
Not
like,
yeah.
What color is your ship? Okay, we'll beam you aboard, right? Like, wait a minute, why didn't you answer any of my questions? Right?
Yeah, and it's funny, but again, I think chapter 19, a lot of information, a lot of character building for Talon. But again, the one thing we have to say is now they're on the planet where Luke has no access to the Force.
Nope.
Right, so he's cut off from the Force. And remember, now he would have been relying on this subconsciously for his whole life and consciously for probably the past 10 years. What do you think that would feel like to wake up and just, like, do you think it would be the equivalent of waking up one day and being blind? Or do you think it'd be the equivalent of waking up and having none of your senses?
No, it'd be like losing one, I think, right? I mean, he has an extra one, but like, yeah, you wake up and you can't hear or you can't see, or I would go with taste. But like, if I had to pick. Although that's COVID, right?
Smell.
Like that's COVID,
Smell.
so we can't do taste. But I mean, he's effectively like us, right? Like,
he's a mere mortal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it might be a little bit more disconcerting, because could you imagine all the information he's able to take in with the Force, and then you're just denied that, right? So sure, you can see, you can smell, you can hear, but you're like he says, he's like, holy crap, Mara's in this room and I didn't know. Like, it's like waking so you'd almost jump out of your skin. Could you imagine? Like you ever know, like, I'm sure we've all done it. You've woken up in the middle of the night, you need to go to the bathroom. You don't turn on the light, you can kind of walk your way into the bathroom, right? And it's not that you can see in the dark, it's just that you know where your bedpost is or where your table is or whatever, and you can get there. But this, I think, would be kind of something like different altogether, right? Not saying that he instantly becomes an invalid, but I think it might be a little bit more, in my reading of it, it's a little bit more drastic.
It might be like going blind for us, because like you said, he sees so much with the Force. It's like us closing our eyes. We can't navigate anymore. We can't feel things where they are. So yeah, I would say it's like losing our sight. It wouldn't be compared to taste, smell, because I think for me, sight would be the most detrimental thing to lose, right? I could live without sight. I could live without hearing people because I could read their lips. I could still partake in many things, but losing your vision, that's a biggie, right?
I see it more as like he's just a mere mortal, but now all of his heightened senses have just been turned way down. Like he might still have his sight, but he's like colorblind. He might still have his hearing, but he needs hearing aids. You know what I mean? Like he still has those senses, but they're just like way lower. And he's so used to everything functioning at full capacity. Now when he's at like 5% of what he's used to, he's just like, what the holy? Right? So that's how I'm seeing it.
I'm lost, And
I guess also because we know of his character, he didn't abundantly use the Force. Like he wasn't like, oh, I'll pass me that piece of fruit and I'll just get a drink.
I got it.
That's what I would do.
So if he wasn't doing that, so maybe he'd be like, well, yeah, I can't sense my environment, but I can still function because he's still trained. And again, we saw that they still physically train and all that stuff. So yeah, so he's still probably at peak or above peak human performance and perception and stuff like that. But this chapter, again, we've got a lot of information from when Talon and Luke talks, and then we also get the impression that for some reason the are they called the Voshner, the dogs, Talon Karide's pets, don't like Luke at all. One of them starts, and then the second one starts and stuff, and I think that is that's a little bit of foreshadowing there, because Talon had to have them removed. He's like, Chin, come and remove them. Right. So I'm thinking, maybe these guys are Force sensitive in some way. And even though Luke isn't, have access to it, they can still detect it in him and stuff. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then over the past two chapters, 18 and 19, we have like Talon saying, to Luke, he's like, oh, what'd you do to Mara Jade? And he's like, I've never met this person. Why the hell does she hate me so much? Like it's, could you imagine how like pouring off, like just someone just emanating pure hatred. And he's like, I've never met him. And Talon's like, that's too bad. I was really hoping you could shed some light on this and stuff. So we're really, now you're like, oh my God, now they're in the same room and she's talked about killing Skywalker and they're on the same thing. And she's just like, how much does she actually respect Talon's authority? Because is she going to, keep her code and her promise or whatever? Because at this point, we don't know, right? And I think that's probably one of the reasons we chose to leave it off at chapter 19, because it ends with just Luke and there's kind of this, why do you hate me type of thing. So lots of building up in this particular kind of half that we've covered, right? So overall, guys, this next portion of the book, overall feelings.
I really liked the character development for all of them. I liked that Leia started trusting in her own abilities to use the Force, because before she knew she had them, but I think she relied so heavily on what she knew. And so when she had her training thing and she was very frustrated because she couldn't do it. And then afterwards, she's like, she trusted her ability to understand the Force and sense somebody's presence or sense when things were a trap or whatever. And then everybody sort of just like, okay, cool. Like you call the shots, we're going to follow you.
Yep.
I thought that was really, really neat. And they could have done it in Zahn could have done it in a completely different way. So I liked the character development on that part. And like just across the board, everybody, they got so many more dimensions to them. And things that we thought we knew about the characters, they were more built up. And I thought, I don't know, I thought it was great.
It was. And it had me questioning whether Leia's going to be stronger than Luke.
Yeah.
Right? because when they were training, when he was first started training her, they're doing that lightsaber thing, and she gets frustrated and says, "I can't do it." And he's like, "You should be able to do it. You were trained to fight on where was it? What was the planet called?
Alderaan.
Alderaan. You were trained to fight on Alderaan. You should be able to do it better than me." Yeah. Right? So I'm wondering now if she's going to be a lot stronger than Luke when she's done her training. Right? It seems like she's picking up on everything so quickly too.
Faster. Yep.
Like I can talk to Luke. I can talk to Luke through my brain, and I believe. Didn't Luke call out to her before he passed out on the X-wing? Yeah, and that's when she woke up. She woke up. Yeah. No, just great character development. Han will do anything to protect Leia, to protect his it's amazing.
Yeah. The writing for Han is great. Like, I mean, it's classic, and so it's so enjoyable. As you know, he's one of my faves. You know, in the movies. But the bad guys in this, or the neutral guys and the bad guys, are really well written, and you have some empathy for them. I kind of want to see things work out for Thrawn a little bit, right? Like and Mara, like not too much, but maybe a little bit. Like some successes. Like I'm invested.
Yeah.
And are you guys getting the feeling that Mara might be a little force sensitive? Because she said 100%. She sensed Luke. I believe the dogs in the last video we did, the dogs freaked out when she walked into the room too, didn't they?
Yeah.
It seems like
Mara.
It seems like she's also force sensitive too, which I'm excited to find out. Right?
Yeah. So, well, we've got one more session to cover. Chapters 20 to 32, the final 12, and then we will be on to the second book, which we will probably just devour because, like we know all the characters, we know all the places, and the plot is running. Yes, let me thank everybody again for joining me on this adventure. Thank you for listening. And hey, thank you for commenting. We've had a couple great comments in there, and we really look forward to bringing this to you. Hope you guys enjoy this in-depth conversation. That even though we are spoilers, again, we're not trying to do everything. So again, if you're listening,
three decade spoilers,
3 decades. And you it sounds interesting. Trust us, it is way better when you read it. I think Jesse said it best. It's like he read 100 pages in one sitting just before even knowing it. So yeah, that's what this book is. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. One more session that we will be bringing next Friday to you. So stay tuned. And until then, of course, may the Force be with you.
All right.